Hello and welcome to Movie Smackdown, the podcast where I take two movies, good or bad, good and good, bad or bad, and compare them. This week we will be talking about the fantastic sci-fi adventure, The Martian, and the movie about Tom Hanks sitting by himself for extended periods of time,
Equally
Castaway.
fantastic.
With me today are Jacob Bessner, Ethan McCabe, and Matthew Martin.
Hello.
So let's get into talking about these movies, and let's do first thoughts on Castaway. Jake, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think I definitely enjoyed Castaway. I hadn't seen it in a while, and I think the first time I watched it, I got really bored. But this time around, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, overall, like it's just a really solid movie. I think it's got a couple like structural issues. Like it spends a lot of time, after the island. I think it spends a little bit too much time, but I like the direction it takes, and it's a very personal film. And there were a lot of things that actually surprised me. Like Zemeckis. One of my issues with most of Zemeckis's movies is that he overuses soundtrack for like emotional gain, and he doesn't do that at all in this. There's almost no score for like the entire middle of the movie.
Which is
good.
I just want to comment something about Zemeckis real quick. He makes a lot of movies, and he's kind of like the Stephen King in movies, where there's a lot of okay stuff. There's some great stuff, and there's also a lot of bad.
Yeah. That's true.
All right, Ethan, let's get your first thoughts.
Yes. So I do like the film. It does kind of like, I feel, start off a little bit slow. But then, like, once he gets to the island, I think that's good. And I do actually like when he goes back. I do like how the real world sets in, and he's like, "Oh man, this is what his life is now." He has to fix his relationships, and I think it like, and I love the ending, how it's just him on that street. I thought it was well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we move on to my thoughts, just kind of take it over.
No,
I have to wait for permission.
Yeah, now go.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. I think Jacob had a good point about the music being very carefully used in Castaway, and I think we'll get to Martian in a minute, but I think this on its own, you're right, it's a very personal movie, and I'm watching it again after so long recently. I think it was a lot more about the personal journey that this guy goes on when he goes to this island alone and everything. Like, obviously there was a lot about that, but there was more, like you said, it was more of the movie outside of the island than I remembered, which was interesting because you get to see that effect that it had on him. Yeah.
Which I like. I like the effect. I like that we see the after. I just think they spend too much time to where it starts to drag. But yeah.
So, I think it worked okay, but it's definitely a old. Oh shoot! I didn't look up what year did that come out.
2000.
2000, right?
Yeah.
So it's slightly dated. I guess pacing was a little bit different 20 years ago, but I mean it's not that.
It makes me feel old.
Right.
I like this movie. This was I said to Jacob before we started recording, I'm glad we got to review two good movies for the first time. The thing about this movie is I've never seen the middle part of it. I've only ever seen from him in Russia till him flying home and him getting back. I've never seen everything that happens between. And with that context, it makes this movie so good to actually see the middle of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys have this movie. Like, you ever have a movie that, like, if you're just scrolling through TV, is always on? This, Black Hawk Down, and I think I can't think of the other movie, but like this is one of those movies I always see on TV, and it's always at the beginning or end.
Yeah, that's true. It's always there.
And Independence Day, that was the other one. Never seen those movies not on TV except for this time with Castaway. All right, now The Martian. Our first thoughts on The Martian. Jake.
Can we go last on Martian, actually?
Oh, okay. Matt.
Want to go backwards? All right. Yeah, I think when you brought up that you were comparing Castaway and The Martian, my initial thought was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, they're practically the same movie, just The Martian was probably pitched as Castaway but on Mars. And it wasn't until I watched it again recently that I realized it's actually pretty different. It's sort of the same concept, but different from Castaway. It's less about the guy on his own than I remembered. It's more about like NASA dealing with the politics and like how do we actually save this guy's life? Can we save his life? Can we bring him home? Which, I mean, both movies are sort of classics now, but I think they both hold up really well. The Martian is still really fun to watch.
Yeah, I'll explain why I chose these two after we go through what we like. How about you, Ethan?
So I was fortunate enough to see The Martian in theaters when it came out, and
Same.
it just it was good. The one big scene I always remember is he's he's doing medical on like his arm. I forget what it is, but it's all bloody. It's all over the place. It's like it was so terrifying, but it was well done. I thought that was well done. But yeah, as Matt said, yeah, it is like about like how NASA is dealing with this. They're like, okay, do we get him? What do we do when we get him? And I like how it's not just a straightforward shot, like he's just surviving. No, he does go through obstacles. And then right when you think he's good, bam, something else happens. And yeah, I think they do a nice job of like portraying the realism. There are a little bit of stuff that is a little bit like I don't see that happening, but I thought they did a good job of portraying how real it is.
Jake?
Well, yeah, I agree with what Matt said as far as like this movie's less about the personal journey and more about these like the behind the scenes stuff, which is one of the reasons I think. Okay, The Martian is one of those movies that I absolutely hate. It sucks.
Really?
It's a bad movie in my opinion. Yeah, I really. The first
Really?
time, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna kick Jake off because this.
No, the first
right.
time. All right. No, but seriously, I don't think it's like a bad movie. I just don't like it at all. My issue with the film, my main issue with the film is it's not really about the characters, and so there's almost nothing to get really attached to or invested in, and it's more about like the technicality of this journey. And I guess that's cool in the same way that like when we were talking about Red Dawn like last week, like it's cool to see all this military tactics and how realistic this approach was taken. Like, but there's no character to really get behind. Like, there's no save the cat. There's no reason for me to feel any sympathy for Mark Watney. I found him annoying a lot of the time, actually. Yeah, I don't know. Like, he's got like a couple emotional moments, but I wasn't really sold by any of them. There was a point in the film where I was just like, all right, I just want to get this over with. Like, yeah, I don't know. It just didn't really work for me. The first time I saw it in theaters what was that, 2015? I think it was like 16.
No, it was 15.
I liked it a lot more, but yeah, in retrospect, after rewatching it, it really had no effect on me.
Yeah, you make a good point about them not being made into like there's no save the cat moment. Like, there's no way to
which I don't think a
relate to
character
the
needs, but there needs to be something interesting about them then, and there's just nothing. It's like he's just like a goofy guy. Like
To be on the other end of the spectrum, this is my #1 movie of all time.
Wow, your favorite movie? Wow,
this is my favorite movie of all time. I actually really enjoy the characters in this movie. I enjoy the story more so than the characters, I'd say. To me, this is the movie that kind of really helped me get into film.
Wow. Oh, I feel bad now because I hate it when people criticize like one of my favorite movies in the same, or like one of the movies that like got me in the same way.
But at the same time, I enjoy the movie, flaws and all. I feel like to me, this movie is incredible. I mean, it's an incredible movie. I am a sci-fi person. Any of you who've seen my screenwriting, I write sci-fi. I enjoy sci-fi movies. All my favorite directors, I like them because of their sci-fi movies. And this is my favorite, movie in terms of design, characters, acting. I think this has the best acting of any movie we've watched so far. So yeah, let's get into the cast read-offs and some information about the director, who directed it. So let's start with the Castaway, being that is the more senior of the movie. You'll get the first go. So it's directed by Robert Zemeckis. He also did the Back to the Future series and a few other small films.
Forrest Gump, just a small movie.
Yeah, small movie.
Also
I
Tom
say,
Hanks.
all right, now for the cast. Tom Hanks as Chuck Nolan, a Wilson Volleyball as Wilson. All right, we're done.
That's basically the whole cast. Too.
But in seriousness, we have Helen Hunt as Kelly Fears, Laurie White as Bettina Peterson, and Nick Searcy as Stan. And that's the cat. I didn't feel like naming all the pilots, and because my rule is they have to appear at the beginning and end of the movie to get worthy of me naming them.
Makes sense.
So what do we think of our director, this cast, and the production of this movie? Because I'll talk about the production in a little bit.
I typically don't have much of an opinion on Zemeckis as far as being a director. I think he does a good job. He never like blows me away with his directing in the same way that like, I don't know, a Tarantino or even like a Christopher Nolan does, where it's like really incredible, mind-blowing shots. But I don't think he needs to do that. And he does have some really iconic ones as well. Overall, I think I enjoy most of what I've seen from Zemeckis. He doesn't really have much of a style. Like a lot of his films could have been made by like Spielberg or someone, in my opinion. He seems like a Spielberg clone to me in a certain way. Castaway, I really like what he did with Castaway though, because he holds on a lot of shots. He's very good at like directing actors and showing us like their emotional struggle visually. I think honestly this is probably my favorite, maybe not my favorite film from him, but like as far as his directing goes, my favorite in that sense, in like a technical sense. I think the directing is really amazing here.
I have to agree with you. I always feel like Zemeckis is kind of like the choice B for a lot of films, because like in terms of Back to Future, I always think that's a James Cameron movie for some reason.
I used to think it was a Spielberg film.
And it's that too. And Forrest Gump I thought was Spielberg until like last year.
They do have a very similar style. I could see them getting used a lot.
And I feel like that's probably because they're two directors from relatively the same period of directing and making movies, and probably even, learning how to make movies.
I'm sure make the same like feel good, typically feel good movies.
Most indie films today generally feel the same to me, so I imagine it's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, yeah, it's how these people were raised and how they came up with their ideas were probably very similar. Spielberg and Zemeckis both have a ton of working class heroes as their main characters. So any more thoughts on the director from anybody?
Ethan?
Robert Zemeckis. Yeah, he's done like a lot of just up and down. Like actually like the Polar Express, he did that one. Actually,
I forgot.
He did that. Yeah, he did that. No, actually. What?
So he experimented with this motion capture CG for a while, because he did that Beowulf one too.
You know who did the same thing?
Who?
Spielberg.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. No, but I think Robert, he's done like a lot of ups and downs, and I want to get to the cinematography because I have thoughts on that.
This is your moment to talk. Let's save that for when we talk about what we like about the movie.
Okay.
Matt, as the director, any thoughts on the director himself?
Pretty much just reiterate what's been said, I guess. Everyone's seen like Zemeckis' movies, and I feel like it's kind of strange that his name isn't as common to come up, because we know the movies so well, but like the director hasn't been known as well. Maybe that's a media thing, but he's definitely got a style that's very similar to Spielberg. So in specific to Castaway, this one definitely stands out. I didn't remember it being a Zemeckis film. And like we said, it's a very personal movie. It has a very unique feel to it overall.
Yeah, it's a different style for him.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Sure. Which is good. Maybe he should have branched out a little more. Maybe if he had more ideas that he could have done something unique with, he would have stood out more.
I guess we should talk about the cast. I feel like the cast is really important because the majority of the cast in this movie is one guy and a volleyball.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Tom Hanks. We can talk about some of the other people I brought up and characters, but let's start with Tom Hanks.
Talk about the star, like the best role you could ever ask for as an actor.
Yeah.
Right?
The whole movie is basically on your own. You get to show the whole range of emotions. It's a very primal sort of role to play. You're basically a caveman, so it's a very powerful role to play, and I think he does an amazing job.
Yeah, he
Also,
sells it.
Wilson at volleyball.
Yeah, and he sells almost all of it. Like the first half of the stuff on the island is all visual. It's just all his face and his expressions. And he's incredible. Like there was a point where I also like the development of his character too, because he has an arc. Like at first he's like this guy who's obsessed with his work, and he doesn't. And they handle this very subtly, which I really liked. Like you just see like his wife like really wants to be with him so badly, but he can't because he's like he's always got work to do. And I love the opening scene too, how it's like he's giving this speech about like you have to, like, your number one priority is to bring the package to the buyer, and it's like if you mess up, the entire FedEx company goes under. And he
plays 3 different characters in this movie.
He
plays
and his arc,
the determined businessman, or the determined fixer, you could call him, this surviving man who's essentially the Neanderthal, and then somebody with a serious case of a changed man with survivor syndrome trying to go back to normal. He plays 3 different characters, and it's great. He's great,
amazing.
Ethan, your thoughts on Mr. Hanks?
Yeah, Tom Hanks. I mean, he's the man. I mean, he's done he's done it all, and he basically is this movie. And I mean, he really acts his heart out. I love his conversation with Wilson. It's just like he's just talking to a volleyball, and it's just like funny. And when he's finally off the island, and when he sees a ship, he just shouts out his girlfriend's name, and I was like, that gives me chills.
Yeah. Dude, I cared more about Wilson than any of the characters in The Martian. Just throwing it out there.
Wow, Jake, man, let's not forget who's in charge here, Jake.
Jake.
You know, I'm actually enjoying this because I get what it's like to hate movies that people like. I don't like Forrest Gump, and I really hate Apocalypse Now.
Well, yeah, that would be the inverse of me hating The Martian. I love Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, so Jake, I could tell you now, you're going to be on the Apocalypse Now episode.
I'm down.
Let me know. Let me know if you're going to do Endgame. I want to tear that movie apart.
I'm trying to find something to compare it to.
I want to. It's good. Just it could have been a lot better. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Someone pointed out like a lot of the Marvel movies rip off like the Star Wars prequels, and
probably
it's incredibly funny. So I guess the next part I want to cover here is production. Talk about so my thoughts on Tom Hanks is he's one of the best actors alive right now. I don't know who, like, you know, we have notorious actors who are alive now, like what's his name? It was just in The Irishman.
I can never remember.
Joe
Robert
Pesci.
De Niro?
No, not him. Robert De Niro. Yes,
Yeah.
who isn't really that good of an actor.
De Niro? Have you seen Raging Bull?
He plays one. He is good when there's a well-written script.
Yeah,
and he plays a certain character really well.
McLain, it just so happens almost every movie he's in has a good script.
Yeah, no,
other than like the ones where he's like, I'll just take a paycheck and do dirty grammar.
Those are why I don't think he's a great.
I think he's a good actor. I don't think he tries when it comes to those movies.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like
movies can you think of? Now I'm curious. What movies is he in that like he has a very small role in?
Joker.
Joker.
Oh yeah, Joker.
That was a basic role, I guess, but like he did it.
I have thoughts on Joker, and I want to do an episode on that because anyway,
Joker and Endgame.
Tom Hanks is incredibly family friendly for his brand. I think majority of the stuff he does, I think you can watch at pretty much every stage of life. You know, he's had a huge impact on film, and especially like World War II film, because apparently he's a huge history buff. And you know, he's been in several great like iconic movies. And you know, it's funny, I was thinking about doing Apollo 13 and The Martian. I was thinking about doing Apollo 13 and Castaway even. I thought you know, we can't do too many Tom Hanks at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
So this then brought me to bring up, talking about Tom Hanks. He's also, like I say, he plays 3 different characters. He also goes through insane body transformation. They shot this in reverse order. He had to get that skinny that he is for the later part of this movie. And then he gained a massive amount of weight for the first part of the movie because they shot it in not reverse order, but they shot, I think, the island stuff first for the later part. And then they did a bunch of stuff, him getting home. Then they did the first part. Last.
Question. Can you guys hear my air conditioner? Should I turn it off?
I can't hear it right now.
I can't hear it.
No.
Okay, good.
Good.
So
I was worried about the same thing.
Okay. Now, for the rest of the cast in this movie, I thought they were good. They weren't on screen enough to really get a read for them, I'd say.
The wife is really good.
Yeah, and she has like a understandable role in the movie, I think.
Yeah,
and I like
his
they don't
entire motivation. Yeah.
I like they don't villainize any one person. Even the pilots in the crash were all like developed enough to like, oh, I feel bad for them.
Yeah, right.
That crash, for 2000, still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, that crash is
Yeah.
the most horrifying
That's
crash.
a dramatic
The
horrifying.
only thing about the crash that feels dated is the part when at the very end the plane just explodes and it looks like something out of like an early or a late 2000s like video game.
There is one bad shot in that.
The whale is also really fake.
Yeah. So I want to talk about production with this movie. So we were talking about Wilson, our favorite character.
Yeah.
There was actually lines written for him, and this movie has several different scripts. So the first script apparently was called Chuck versus Chuck, or Good Chuck, Bad Chuck. It was going to be about his split personalities going to war with each other on the island.
That sounds like a cheesy 2000s comedy.
Yes. And then apparently the other idea they had was Wilson was going to talk at one point in the movie. Now, they did keep lines for Wilson. And somebody apparently would.
Some of them, maybe.
And somebody would apparently read them off screen. So that's Tom Hanks was reacting to that, which is probably a smart decision because it makes his reactions seem like he's genuinely been alone for 5 years on an island.
Mm-hmm.
And then also apparently they hired a lot of locals. They also had a lot of the crew and Tom Hanks go through survival classes beforehand. And they did find a actual remote island. And also a lot of the night shots were shot at daytime and they use computer CGI and whatnot effects to make it seem like nighttime. Except for the fire scene.
Why'd they do that?
No, I think it looks... The fire scene is the only scene they shot at nighttime.
Yeah.
I think I didn't know that until after I did my research on it, so I think they got away with it.
Yeah.
It's hard to shoot fire at night.
Yeah.
Just blows up the camera.
I have one thing to say just about like CGI anything. If you can shoot it with it like, let's say if you need to have like, I don't know, just a cow, and like I know, just a cow in your shot, but I would rather take the time, effort, go out there, go to a farm and get a cow, and not just CGI in a cow. There's just an overabundance of CGI. It just makes
I think it was more logistics because they were actually shooting on a remote island. I don't know if any of you've been on boats before, but trying to boat somewhere at nighttime is pretty horrifying.
I know
what you mean, though. Like,
also,
a lot of movies do that because they can.
Every line on the island was dubbed in post-production.
A lot of movies do that, and it's actually surprising to me that, like, kind of the majority of films, all the dialogue is ADR, which doesn't usually look that way.
So now, let's talk about The Martian. Shut up, Jacob.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
You were thinking it.
You're right.
So it was directed by Ridley Scott, who's, we're talking about Spielberg, Zemeckis being a Spielberg ripoff. Not ripoff, but like kind of similar to. I always confuse Ridley Scott movies for James Cameron movies.
Yeah, if we were to make the comparison between Zemeckis and Spielberg, then I think it's very apt to also compare Ridley Scott to Cameron because they both had the same like mega blockbuster style. And
they also worked on the same movie series.
They have the same kind of aesthetic and like very not necessarily lacking style, but like I don't know how I would describe it, but their styles are kind of similar, where it's like focus more on the spectacle or the element of the film that you want to present the most, like in Alien or Aliens, they're like most important. The thing that they're very.
I'm gonna cut you off, Jake.
You know, I honestly lost my train of thought.
Yeah. So our cast is Matt Damon as Mark Watney, Jessica Chastain as Melissa Lewis, Kristen Wiig as Annie Monstro, Jeff Dean as Director Sanders, Michael Pena as Rick Martinez, Sean Bean as Mitch Henderson, Kata Mara as Beth Johansson, Sebastian Stan as Chris Beck, Askell Henny as Alex Vogel, and Chitwell Hafer as Vincent Kapoor. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
He has the most complicated name of all time.
Donald Glover as Rich Parnell. So start talking about directors. I think, as you were saying again, Ridley Scott's a great sci-fi director. Apparently he was between doing this and possibly another Prometheus movie, and I'm so glad he did this.
He did both, so
no, he was going to do another one to follow.
Wasn't that Alien Covenant?
No, it was going to be another Prometheus.
Oh.
Yeah,
all right, whatever.
In my mind, there's only 2 Alien movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's all there needed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast about all the Alien movies that almost were. So, yeah. So he's, I think, a sci-fi staple. I think all of his stuff, and like I say, he's very similar to James Cameron, where he has this sci-fi hero list, but in the same time, these are all very skilled people and very hardworking people in his movies. I think, like, there's usually nobody who's incompetent in his movies, I'd say. Yeah, so let's talk about the director, Ridley Scott. Jake, any more thoughts you'd like to get off?
I mean, I like a lot of his films. He just never strikes me as like a defining filmmaker who's like I think his best work is way earlier on in his career.
Yeah, I think he's kind of maybe fallen into the trap of sticking to one project a little too much. And I'd say that's really the case with his Alien series, and I think that's been his fault, is there's so many bad thoughts with those new Alien movies that people forget about a lot of his better older work.
I couldn't tell you much of what Ridley Scott's done other than the Alien movies and Martian.
Blade Runner,
that's the other one.
Yeah.
Has he done anything else? Like,
I mean, American Gangster's all right. What else has he done? He made this movie called The Duelist that I've heard is pretty good, way back in the 70s. I don't know.
I've always liked
he
his
did
stuff.
Gladiator too. I think it's
and Black Hawk Down. He did Black Hawk Down too.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that movie. And that's all I'm gonna say. I think we're gonna do that for a later episode. I was actually gonna compare that one to American Sniper, but we're not doing that movie for reasons like me not wanting to be hit with a legal suit.
Probably a good time to pass on that one.
Yeah, that's true. Ridley Scott, he's done a lot, but he just sticks way too much with the Alien and Prometheus stuff. Like when comparing to Spielberg, is he overrated? I guess so. But the one reason why he's made all these great films is whenever he does one great film, it's like there will be no sequel, or if there's a sequel, I will not be involved. Like with the Jaws 2, Spielberg directly said, "I will not be involved in Jaws 2 if they're going to make a sequel."
Sequels are very, very difficult business. If you want to do it right, and they're often not. Hard to pick up that project, but that makes me think you're totally right, because Ridley Scott's best work, I would say, would be Alien and maybe The Martian. And I guess Blade Runner, though I'm not a huge fan of that personally. He's got some of the most creative approaches to stuff, and a lot of those movies, especially, like, I'm not sure, was Alien a book? I know Blade Runner. It
was a script. Blade Runner was based off of a sci-fi series.
Yeah.
This was a book, and it's an incredible book.
Unless I'm mistaken, I think The Martian and Blade Runner were books written by the same author. I wish I could remember his name.
Well, no, it wasn't Blade Runner. Do androids dream of electric sheep?
It's
by
different
Phil
people.
K. Dick.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe they are different people.
Yeah,
But,
The Martian actually, again, some of the production stuff. I'll talk about how it came to be. I like Ridley Scott. I think he's done a lot for sci-fi. And even if I don't like his stuff, I have to acknowledge the fact things he's made has contributed a lot to sci-fi in general. Alien has kind of given us this grand idea of the endless horde type of alien creature, I think, mainstreamed. I mean, it's been there before in other forms of media, but this made that idea of this like kind of endless horde that can kill you put it into sci-fi for the first time. And Blade Runner, I think, really put this, cyberpunk wouldn't exist without it, nor would any type of neo-noir without it. There's a style of film and sci-fi that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for, Ridley Scott's movies. And The Martian, I feel like, is another kind of, I want to say, groundbreaking movie where it, even if you didn't like it, it set a lot of trends in sci-fi. I think he does a great job at least conceptualizing ideas. As for the cast of this movie, I thought everybody performed incredibly well, even actors who I generally don't like in other movies. Matt Damon's, I think, kind of one of those actors who, like, 7 out of 10 things he does are good, and you want to forget about those 3.
Yeah.
Kristen Wiig, someone who I generally don't like in movies because she does a lot of the same character. I thought she was good in this. Michael Pena is another one of those actors who 9 out of 10 things he does is decent. And then you really want to forget about that one thing you saw him in.
Wait, what was the one thing?
I can't think of any, but I forgot about it, like I said.
Yeah.
All right, Jake.
I like the cast. I think it is well cast, and I do think the actors do a good job with their lines, although my main issue is with the writing, I think, which is some of their lines are not very good. But we'll get into that later. I think the cast is fine. I think all the actors do well.
Well, that was quick.
Not much to say about it, honestly, because most of them don't get a lot of screen time. Even Matt Damon, like, compared to Tom Hanks, gets like no screen time, or he gets very little, I should say, like relative to Tom Hanks at Castaway, because he does, like, they show his progression, but they spend so much time on Earth and what have you, and it's less about his emotional journey, more about like, the technical possibility of this happening, which I guess if you're interested in, I guess that makes the film very interesting. But I don't know, personally I prefer more character driven stuff.
Yeah. He gets more of a regular amount of screen time, I would say, than like Castaway, because Castaway is sort of the outlier, I think. It's not perfectly it's not exactly normal to have the entire movie just on one person.
I guess.
I think Castaway is the more unique one of the two. I think The Martian is sort of structured differently, so Matt Damon doesn't get as much as Tom Hanks did, but it's structured to be a different movie. Like, it's about NASA a lot. So my argument
I like the cast in The Martian. I think Matt Damon does a fun job. He really, I think he has fun with it. It's like, and like, he's funny. I think he's really funny when he makes those the botany jokes. I was like, funny, and I think he's a good actor. And Jessica Chastain, she does a good job. I completely forgot like all the other work she's done, but yeah, I think she does a good job in this movie. She really is kind of like the driving force behind getting everyone back to Matt and saving him. So I think the cast does a nice job. And equally to the Castaway, they're kind of like the same. They're like kind of like not in it as much.
I should also mention, I think Jessica Chastain honestly had the best performance in this film. Like, she was really great.
Yeah, I think she's the stand. She was like, she had a very interesting role, actually very similar to Tom Hanks' role in Saving Private Ryan, where she's thinking of a group as a collective. And, I thought everybody did good. So talking about production, the production of this movie is incredible in my opinion. They did a lot of things that are shown in the movie are physical. A lot of pieces of the rovers and where the base camp is. It also has the potato farm. I need to talk about this. On the set, they actually had real potato farms with different stages of potato growth. And I don't know why, but that makes me incredibly happy to know they put that much effort into something, because you could have just made fake potatoes, I feel, but they did it. And also, this is one of the more scientifically accurate movies I've seen.
Yeah.
And this is also incredibly faithful to the book. Now, they do take out things and they combine characters. And Jake, you'd probably like the book better, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I'd imagine.
So maybe I'll get you that as a gift. Maybe you'll appreciate the movie more.
The book was better. I imagine it would make me appreciate it less, but okay.
I'd say this is the best adaptation of a book to film. Because there's always that issue of dream. And actually, I want to talk about the book for the moment. The book started essentially as a blog format, set up as if it were a real guy sending these logs. They were started as logs from different people in a blog format. So let's talk about what we like about these movies. Let's start with Castaway. I want to start off by saying Castaway's it's the first film where I realized, wow, a good actor can really make the difference between how good and bad a film is. So yeah, let's start with that.
Imagine this movie with a different actor at all.
Yeah, no.
I could. Yeah. I could.
Can you imagine it being as good though?
Probably not, but I can. It would be the guy who played 127 Hours.
Oh, James Franco?
Yeah, James Franco.
I feel like he'd be terrible for this.
I'm sorry. Much prefer Tom Hanks.
I don't like James. I don't like James Franco.
No. Of course, Tom Hanks, yes, would be better than James Franco. I'm just saying James Franco could, pull it off. Not as good, but could.
Yeah.
I'd watch it. Probably.
He does carry 127 Hours.
Him and Seth Rogen are two people who are like, I don't get why you guys, so many people like you, especially Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen, if you're listening to this, I don't apologize. Fuck you. As we know, we all joke here. And Seth Rogen, if you do hear this, I apologize. And I would like a job someday. I don't know if you influenced that at all. No, but in seriousness, Tom Hanks carries this movie, and I want to get your thoughts. What do you guys like, Jake?
I don't think he necessarily carries it, but I think he adds a lot to it. I think what really sells the movie for me is how personal and how minimalist it is. It's like very simple. You get this very subtle like husband-wife relationship. You really understand his character right out the gates. Like, I work for FedEx. I'm a workaholic. I'm all about getting the package to the person no matter what. And it sets up for this like horrible incident where he's stuck on this island and he's a survivalist, and he's not even a survivalist. He just he's very passionate, and he knows what he has to do. And you really see him develop and like learn how to survive. They show that really well. The first time I saw the movie, I thought the cut to 4 years later was really abrupt. This time around, I understood it, and I really liked it a lot more. They also set up some things really great, like the broken tree that he later, like he says, like, I tried to hang myself. And it's like, oh, that's why that tree was broken. So there's like really good, like subtle stuff in that. And I also, again, like I love how minimally they use the music.
Yeah.
There's like almost no emotional manipulation. They really bank on you just like seeing this character and liking him because he's so interesting and he is a good character with a flaw to overcome and this really compelling arc. Yeah, it's just a really good movie.
All right, I'll go next. 5 things why I like the movie. Let's see.
He's got a list. He's one-upping you guys.
Yeah.
Organized.
Tom Hanks. The just how raw and real it is. Wilson and the relationship when he comes home. How he has to deal with that.
thought Tom Hanks was going to be all 5. But...
I was like, I just gave him credit for no reason.
No, I thought about doing that, but I was like, okay, gotta have some substance to my why.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that at all? Why?
Oh yeah, no. Tom Hanks, he steals the show, and I love Wilson, and it always makes me sad when Wilson just goes away.
Yeah, I love that scene. Well, we can talk about it later, but that scene is like
I want to ask something real
good.
quick to you guys before we get to Matt why he liked it.
Sure.
How many times did you guys think at like what point have you ever? So I do this thing where I watch a movie. I decide, okay, this is the point where I would have died. The plane crash, I would have died. How long do you think you guys could make in Tom Hanks' shoes?
I don't think I could have done the getting rid of his own tooth.
Yeah.
I had to skip that scene. That scene makes me physically painful. Like
the
physically,
sounds in it are
I actually
can't. So cringing.
I just watch movies like this. I would have died here. I would have died here.
Yeah.
I think I would have tried to swim, and then about an hour into my swim, I would have realized this was a mistake.
Ethan's that guy from Dunkirk who swims into and no one sees him again.
Okay, first off, Dunkirk, I love that movie. I think it's great.
Matt, why do you like this movie?
Yeah. Kind of reiterating what's been said, but I mean, it's a very unique film even today. I think no one's done such a alone on an island kind of thing in a dramatic way.
You know what? Me and Jacob saw one at Sundance. It was Sweetheart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that one when we were there.
And basically, I remember what Jacob said. You know, the acting could have been so much better if the direction was better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like Castaway, but there's a monster coming after the.
Yeah, it's basically
yeah.
Yeah. If you ever like Castaway is sort of the classic go-to movie for if you ever want a character study. It's all about one guy, so there's no way it couldn't be. But there's such a range of emotion in it. I think I feel like it's just really, really done well in practically every way because I'm afraid I've frozen for a minute. Am I still here?
You're still here. You're good.
That happened last time. Okay, you were all just very still. I'm trying to pick up my old train of thought I had when Jacob was talking, but in general, it's got like very minimalistic music and cinematography, which enhances just letting the actor do his thing, which I think is the flagship part of the movie because you go to see this movie because you want to see a guy trying to cope with being on an island on his own and survive. There's a lot of I guess what I mainly love about the movie is that any script is really great if it appeals to primal things in people. So like basic stuff like survival, hunger, attraction, whatever, comedy even. They're like things that a caveman could understand. And this movie that's about as close as you can get to an actual caveman on screen it hits very close to that mark. And yet it also implements more modern stuff like the beginning and end of the film where it connects so perfectly to a modern businessman who's just sort of a horrible boss. And then how all of this primal experience changes him as a person by the end of it. I think it's just a really unique and well thought out story. Yeah. I'm glad they went with this version than the other ones.
Yeah, and like I said, so actually I want to talk about Tom Hanks' involvement with getting this movie made. Apparently he pitched the idea of wanting to do a movie where he's he's on one of those delivery planes because apparently I forget where he was, but he was like looking at the sky and saw all these cargo planes. I realized most of them were cargo planes. It's like, what happened if somebody crashed with one of those planes? I like that this is the most horrifying plane crash I've ever seen in movies. From like the moment their plane starts going down to every other part is generally the scariest plane crash I've seen in any movie. And that's including war movies. Movies are about plane crashes and like genuinely like terrifying like docu movies essentially. It's horrifying to see that crash.
I think part of that is because of how innocent Tom Hanks' character is at the
Yeah.
time. He's such a just like boss that is normally in charge of so many things, and then in this one moment, he's like, "Is this normal? Like, have you guys know what to do when this happens, right?" And then everything just goes to shit, and he's absolutely at the mercy of what happens.
I think that's what makes him such a relatable character. Because how many times, like when we like start get like bumps on an airplane, we think the pilots have this covered. Meanwhile, the pilots up front, fuck.
Yeah, I like the escalation of it too. How it starts off like, oh, something exploded, and then the guy's like trying to calm Tom Hanks down, and then he like hits his head. He's bleeding everywhere, and Tom Hanks just staring at him like scared out of his fucking mind. He can't even say anything. Like, it's great.
I also like you get foreshadowing in this movie. I feel like because this movie is like a how-to guide on foreshadowing. Because I do notes while I watch these movies. All my notes are about foreshadowing in this one. And I want to start in the very beginning. We get in the very beginning we have something that foreshadows the end of this movie with the initial package there. I also like that shot, and I only seen that used in one other movie where it like follows the object, and that's Lord of War, which was going to be next week's episode, but we're doing something different next week. But that will be coming very soon. And there's some, they foreshadow how he's kind of prepared for this stuff with showing off like these you see this stuff like he's been sailing before, and like some of the minor, like not survival, but things that could apply to survival on there. It's set up by his character. He's a problem solver. His friend's wife has, I assume, cancer. I don't know if they ever say directly it's cancer.
Yeah.
And that is set up as that. He's a very calculated person and a very rational person. I also like the Swiss knife on the keychain at the beginning, because that kind of foreshadows the need for survival. Yeah. And then
I never noticed that, really.
Yeah.
There is a lot of foreshadowing.
But he even holds it up at the end, thinking that how much he could have used that.
Right. Sorry, just a quick tangent. I always love the scene at the end when he's been rescued and they have like a seafood buffet.
Oh, yeah.
Holding the lighter.
Yeah.
How easy is this?
Yeah, with no dialogue, you can tell exactly what he's thinking. It's so good.
100%.
Well, and I want to talk about, this is a very realistic survival movie. It's more realistic than any Bear Grylls. And to this, I don't apologize to Bear Grylls, because he's generally a terrible survivalist, and nobody should listen to him. Yeah, he might disagree.
Throwing shade on this podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, what
Seth Rogen, now Bear Grylls?
That's how you get the views. You got to get everyone angry.
No, I was joking about Seth Rogen. I mean it about Bear Grylls. He's actually dangerous with some of the information he tells people.
He does tell people some dangerous stuff.
Yeah. The decisions he makes are terrible often. Yeah, maybe that SAS trained, like, well, we don't have to rescue them. We'll just train our soldiers how to kill themselves. So I like that he, there's very realistic things, and I read a lot of like World War II books, and a big pattern in World War II are guys getting shot down over the Philippine Islands and getting stranded in the Pacific for long periods of time. So when he's eating the fish, you can eat raw fish if you pick it right out of the ocean. Might have some stomach issues. I also like he mentions coconuts are laxatives. Then there's the crab scene where he tries to eat the crab raw, and it pours out a nice viscous liquid, kind of snot looking, which something that really is those type of crabs. And I also like they kind of go over the psychological, because after World War II, they found a lot of dead pilots on islands, and they thought, oh, these guys stabbed them, starved themselves or something. Turns out a lot of them shot themselves because they figured nobody's going to rescue me. So they do talk about his will to live in the movie in a very unique way. That scene where they show you it was a noose after Wilson tells him I like the device character Wilson giving him a reason to talk. Because if he didn't talk, this would be a very boring movie.
I think Wilson is a great addition. It adds a whole nother dimension to it.
How often can you have any kind of script where you get an inanimate object that by the end of the movie people are crying because they lose it?
Yeah.
I think it's a very unique thing.
Yeah, that happens a few times. Like they foreshadow that too when he loses Wilson when he after throwing him out and then finds him right away. That foreshadowing is like I forget about some of it. I'm sure some of us go, oh, you forgot to mention this moment, but this movie really is a lot of foreshadowing. I also like 5 years later looks like 5 or 4 years later.
Yeah.
He is skinny. He looks terrible. He's like a leather tan.
Yeah, it's the makeup outstanding.
Yeah, apparently his beard was real.
I believe that.
Of course it was real, of course.
Yeah. Tom Hanks can grow a beard.
Yeah, I think besides myself, most people can grow beards fairly well. I can really only do a mustache and then this on my chin here.
It's unfortunate.
So yeah, I think it's interesting the things that how the passage of time as well in this movie.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It's very concise.
After watching the Red Dawn remake, I realized passage of time can really, really make or break some movies. And this does passage of time very well. Where and the first moment he's on the island, we really get a sense of how terribly beat up and desperate he is. So I'm gonna let you guys talk because I feel like I've just been rambling.
You're right. Passage of time is it's always a good storytelling tool, and this in particular, it works really well in this probably because, like you said, it would be really boring to watch a guy alone for too long, and because of the time change, we're able to pull it off without cutting away to like his wife and kids at home or anything. Like you get to just stay in the moment, stay completely separated from real society, but stay in the mindset of this character. You get to see how everything changes in just a few years. I think it's interesting.
I think the one thing I will say Castaway does better than The Martian is just if it needs to depend on one certain area, it has that beat.
This movie is actually essentially like a TV trope that what they call a shoebox episode where they keep it all to one location. And I usually hate that when they do in TV because you find out how terrible TV can be sometimes with that.
That's true.
Yeah,
a lot of
but this is a movie that does that for, I'd say, I don't know, a large, at least 80% of the movie, and it works out incredibly well. What do you guys think of the use of the FedEx boxes and FedEx involvement in this movie in general?
I always think that's a really creative approach to it because if you're just making a movie, if the original idea was just to make a movie where like Tom Hanks pitched it and he was like, I'm going to be alone on an island so that everyone can see how good of an actor I am, you don't think to throw in something as modern as that. But having the random packages that wash up on shore and he has to figure out how to use them creatively, like he uses ice skates as the blades to do any kind of cutting, and that's really creative. I think that adds a whole extra element to the story that's really useful.
Yeah.
FedEx, you're useful for this one time.
I feel like I should give them credit. They did not pay to have them in the movie. That wasn't something the studio insisted on using FedEx. Also, I should mention, so my mom works for a company based out of Memphis, and Memphis is the hubbing capital, the shipping capital of the world. And they actually work in the old base headquarters for FedEx.
They actually filmed in there.
I don't think they filmed there, but I just feel like mentioning that's where FedEx headquarters.
Oh,
Because
okay.
they do say so. They say, "Oh, get back to Memphis," because Memphis is incredibly important. I'm torn on the later half of the movie because there's parts of it I really like because I like the idea of dealing with the consequences. Essentially, there's parts of it I also don't like.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about our issues with the film?
I think we'll do that format because these are two good movies, and I feel like we're kind of dragging on because sometimes I find it's easier to talk about bad movies and good movies. So let's go with our issues, and then we'll talk about The Martian next. So what issues do we have?
I agree. I think the third act, or not, well, I guess, the third act drags a little bit. Like it's a very weirdly structured film. Like we get our first act, then our second act, and then we get like this huge, like the third act, the climax of the movie is him escaping the island pretty much and finding this boat. But then there's like 40 minutes of movie left. And it's like, I don't know, it loses a lot of momentum just as a film. And while I like what they do with it, like they make a lot of really good, like, they do a great job completing the character's arc. They do a great job showing how he's affected by this. The performance is still amazing. There's some really dramatic beats in there as well. Like when he's talking to when his wife his wife's new husband like shows up and like says, "Hey, she couldn't come to see you. She's not ready yet." Like that's, and there's just a lot of good stuff, but I feel like it takes too long. And there are a couple scenes in that third act that are weird. Like the last scene where the woman shows up and she gets out of the car. She's like, she gets in the car. She's like, "Where are you going?" It's like, you just saw Tom Hanks and you were like, I'm gonna hit on him real quick. It's like, I mean, I know it's Tom Hanks and all, but still, I don't know. That scene is a little bit forced. Although I like the last image being of him at these literal crossroads. Yeah, I don't know. I think there are a lot of great ideas in that third section, but I don't know if it's the most cohesive. It's the least compelling part of the film, I think. As a whole.
Okay, question. If the first 2/3 are great, but if the last third is terrible, does that make you hate the movie?
Yes, but I don't think the third act is terrible.
No,
I don't think it's weak.
So
relative to the rest of it.
Okay. Then and then my other question is, if you think the first 2/3 are terrible, but then the last third is amazing, do you think that movie is perfect?
No.
Or great?
Definitely not perfect.
Yeah, definitely not perfect.
Be okay.
Just like
I wouldn't say great either.
I know a movie can be okay and then great because of the ending or beginning, but or a movie can become okay. And I feel like that's the downfall of this movie is it's not great in my opinion. It's good because
I agree.
The last part really slows it down. But also it would be so hard to they're realistic about it. I think that's something I have to appreciate is because it makes sense his wife would move on. He's been dead for 5 years pretty much.
Yeah, like all the beats in that section are really good. It's just
it feels like another
in
movie.
This very slow, awkward way. I don't know.
It feels like another movie almost.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I do. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there are. It's a weird structure. I think.
Yeah,
it doesn't really work.
Ethan, you were going to say something?
Hot topic. I hate the cinematography. I don't like the cinematography.
Okay, I'd like to hear your opinion on why. Like, what is it about the cinematography that?
I think because I just don't. The fire scene that's great because it's vibrant with like the contrast, but it's just a lot of the scenes. It's just him on the island, and it's just like very white, very bright. It's just like there's like no very other colors. It's just other than like the FedEx colors and the volleyball. There's just not many other colors except for the green trees. I just don't. It's just this.
Yeah, I mean it's not like incredible like Revenant, Emmanuel Lubezki cinematography, but it's like. I don't know. I think it's fine. Like it's very down to earth, very grounded. I think it's fine. Personally,
there's a few moments in this movie that like really like kind of just I don't want to say bother me, but just like don't age well or like aren't really like this slow motion when he knocks his tooth out.
I skipped that scene. So I didn't even know.
I
Let's
have
take
to
a
ask.
look.
So what is it about like that a tooth thing that bothers you, man? Like, is that just like a person?
Eye stuff and
it's-
tooth stuff really freak me out.
See, I have that problem, but with my toe, like fingernails.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, fingernails.
Like,
No thanks.
I saw like a movie about the war in the Pacific, and like they tortured people by shoving shit up their fingernails. I couldn't watch that.
I
Ugh.
can't hold in my
That like
hand
I
now.
that and
can't
like
handle
somebody
that.
getting their neck cut in movies always like is like
I don't know.
makes me
Neck cut is
squirm.
like,
Next, like,
that's pretty
For
standard.
some reason, that's never bothered me. Maybe once or twice, but like,
I
it's
think-
such a strangely vulnerable area that I just don't associate with. Maybe because I've never been injured there.
I haven't been
probably.
either, but it's just I don't know something about like the idea is that's not quick to me. I guess is why is terrifying.
Yeah, it's
Because like
No, I've seen like the throat slitting in Friday the 13th, and it's so cheesy. After that, I'm just like, okay, nothing will affect me.
we'll just draw a red marker on his neck and it'll look great. What are you talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Another
It's
problem I have is you know, I am someone who loses attention very easily, and I feel like it's incredibly easy to get bored with this movie. So
I don't know. I don't agree, but I think I got a little bit bored in the third act, but
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
oh yeah,
is-
sure then, yeah.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's like all descending this falling action doesn't really like it's wrapping things up. It's not progressing the plot anymore at that point.
Imagine you had the best
I spent 40 minutes doing
the best appetizer in your life, the best entree you had, then you had the most mediocre dessert ever.
dessert.
Yeah.
Like that's how I feel like it was. It's like I just had this amazing steak and this incredible appetizer of like wings or something. This cake's okay.
You're making me
Carrot.
hungry.
I got
wanna
carrot
get food
cake.
now.
The ending was carrot cake.
Yeah. It
I'm-
gets a little disappointing there.
Like it's cake, but I'm disappointed at the kind of cake.
I like carrot cake.
But have you ever had like stale carrot cake? It's not.
Okay,
It's
that's
Like this has been sitting in the refrigerator in your dorm for a few days.
Yeah,
Type of
okay.
carrot cake. Like
Yeah.
I might need to see the hospital if I eat all this type carrot cake.
I think
But
I have
yeah,
to
that's-
agree, like on my opinion of what's bad about it. The ending is easily the weakest part. They had a lot of great ideas. They could have cut 10 to 20 minutes out of it, though.
Yeah.
They might have been trying to pad the runtime, or maybe it was
No, it was already
intentional.
pretty long at that point.
Yeah,
doubt
I
they
think-
wanted to
Yeah.
pad anything.
Probably not.
I think they wanted to deal with the realism of your life's not going to be the same.
And like it's a bunch of really good points. Going back to your old life after that long of a period of time, it's not going to be like back to normal.
Yeah,
And
like you could spend a whole sequel movie discussing that. I don't think that just wrapping it up in the final 40 minutes is the most satisfying or compelling thing. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
I
There
think
was
it just takes too long.
There was a show I watched, and I was way too harsh on it, only because when it was good, it was perfect. I loved every single minute of it. But it didn't focus on that. It focused on other stuff, and I'm just like, focus on this, not that. You know what the best part is, not this. And just, I just
Yeah.
got,
show was it?
I just got.
Yeah, what show is it?
Oh, it was an anime show. It's called The Forest of Piano, and basically the best parts was when he played the piano. That was the best part. Everything else was just like, okay. Yeah.
A lot of shows do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like at the ending it was like kind of like they finished writing and they said, "Well, if we did it, we're back here," and they kind of like it was like early in the morning and they just wanted to get it over with. I feel like they could have done more with the ending. Is I guess why I say to make it more interesting. Also, something they never. I would like to something I would like to see is like they also don't address the fact he would be like incredibly famous now, returning 5 years.
Yeah.
I think maybe he would probably get like on the news or something,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it would
I don't.
probably be swept under the rug into
yeah.
He would be the
I
same. I
don't.
think he'd be the same type of famous where there's a few weeks of hysteria about him and he gets a good book deal out of it. And I would like to see that. It would be honestly, it probably would have been like what happened to the real life Captain Phillips, who Tom Hanks also has played.
Oh yeah, Captain
Yeah.
Phillips. I think.
I don't know.
Or,
I like that it's all about his emotional arc, and they keep all of even in the third act, they keep everything focused on that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so let's move on to The Martian. Because I like The Martian, we're actually going to start with what we don't like about it.
Do me last.
Okay.
I'm going to start. I think the movie's a little unfocused, and having read the book, even though I think it's the most faithful to the book movie I've seen in a long time, it's hard to convey something that's widely from first-person view, and they do their best job. My problem is I do feel like I don't get to know the characters as much as I would like to, and the story does feel a little rushed at times. But besides that, in my opinion, this is my top number one movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I would kind of agree. I think, I would agree on the character part. That's probably the weakest part of the film, is that they don't really develop anyone. They just give you their roles and then expect you to like them. And to their credit, I do like them. I think the movie does a lot right. There's different characters of all different perspectives on this. I'm not a fan personally of like audio log kind of stuff, which is what I've heard the book is written like. It's just his accounting of what happened. I like what they did in the film more. I like that style more, where you get to go back and forth and like actually see some of that action, sort of favoring show rather than tell. It's always interesting to hear logs from someone, but and like imagine someone uncovering this, especially if like the person was dead and they're just finding this like left behind evidence or whatever. But that wasn't the case with the story. So I thought that they actually found a very better way of telling the story by going back and forth, seeing that like political distress that happens to NASA when they claim an astronaut on another planet is dead and they left him behind, but he's actually not. It's a very complicated issue, and I think that part of the story is almost what I like more. But the science and stuff, the other thing that I don't like about the movie is how much science is in it, which is sort of the selling point of it. But there's a lot of things that it's like it's always on the line for me between I believe this and don't believe this, because I just don't know enough about botany. I'm like, could this happen? Is how much of this is not real? And I always feel like a little bit lied to being on that line. You know what I mean?
It's very accurate. I looked that up, but yeah, I get that. It reminds me of something that might remind me to talk about myself a little when we get into why I like this movie. Jacob, open up.
No, wait.
You oh, wait, Ethan, did I skip over you? Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so focused on not waiting to kick Jacob off this podcast permanently.
So I think what I don't like about it is just it does seem a little bit too easy for him to kind of like get this farm growing. That's like a little like he kind of got quick on that. It felt like maybe just the pacing like if they maybe was stretched out a little bit more, maybe just a little bit better. The characters, they could have been developed more, and when they're getting Matt Damon, it's like it's like the last scene, and he's basically we remember like where he's like coming to them and like they need a spacewalk out to get him. Well, basically, I think my least favorite part about that is just like something, of course, goes wrong, and then it's just like a 5-second, like 2-minute, like heart pounding race. Like, oh, is he gonna get? I was like, you could have just. I felt you didn't need to do that. You could have just got him him safe and sound. You didn't need to do like one last big jump scare. But other than that, that was it.
I see what you mean.
But I get why they did that, just just to show more like inconveniences. But still, I just would have been like, you could have just brought him safe and sound.
I want to say something I don't like is the whole fly like Iron Man, because
I really fucking didn't like. You know that scene in Gravity where George Clooney is like, let's go. There's a scene in Gravity where George.
Yeah.
He's got George Clooney, and George Clooney's still being tugged towards Earth.
I do know
there's no gravity in space.
They should both still be staying like this.
Yeah, exactly. This was the same thing for me. I was like, shouldn't he pop both of them? Like,
technically, I'm really trying to defend this hard. Technically, they understand. I'm gonna wait till this part when I had talked about myself when we get to what we like. So Jacob, open up for my favorite movie part.
Okay, well, here's the thing. You have this movie and you've got Matt Damon on Mars. What the hell was his character supposed to be? He's this like goofy botanist guy. He's got no flaw. He's got no arc. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's just like there. I don't like any of the video log stuff. Like, it was the same thing with Avatar, where it's like he's telling all the dumb people what they
No, he's confident at what he does, at least.
That's being faithful to the book.
No, it's better. It's better than an Avatar. I don't care if it's faithful to the book. The book might suck. I have no idea.
I'm sending you the book. I'm stapling it to you until you read it.
Jacob, sometimes the character... Sure, yeah, he doesn't have a development, but he's funny. Sometimes that's
not enough, and I didn't find it funny. I honestly,
sometimes that's all that convinces me.
There was no humor in this movie that landed for me, which sucks because
you can go fuck yourself.
No, that's a personal thing. Like I don't hold that against the film, but the humor was like very Marvel, like quippy stuff to me, and I don't know. I didn't like. It wasn't like gut-bustingly hilarious. Like, this wasn't a comedy, and I didn't find it too funny, and it wasn't like good enough where like he's so charismatic that I like love this character. And that might come down to Matt Damon. Like, imagine if he was Robert Downey Jr., right? Who's like,
I would hate that, actually.
Charisma 100%. Like, I could probably get behind that more. I don't know 100%, but like,
on that note,
Matt Damon's just like,
hold on, wait, Ethan, hold on, I want to hear him out.
That would actually be really interesting.
Yeah. The story moves so quick, and this is something that's more personal, but I really prefer movies with very long, fleshed out scenes, take a lot of time where we get to feel our character and their emotion and where they are. This movie is like montage fast. Like, it really moves quick, and I prefer slower movies. And there's just like, there's no character development. They don't leave any time to really develop him or give him an arc or anything. And it just keeps moving so quickly. Like, he's on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Like, there's no point, there's no like area where there's enough time spent like building up tension and stuff. Like, the airlock randomly blows up at one point. They didn't set that up at all.
No, they do. I will defend that. Yeah, they do foreshadow it later on.
Do they? Because I was confused on that.
No, they do. They do. I will.
The foreshadowing of it.
All right. Well, I didn't pick up on it. Maybe that's
it is a blink and you miss it type thing.
Oh. Well,
Jacob, what is it with you and not liking space movies?
Oh, yeah, this is a pattern with you.
My favorite movie is 2001: A Space Odyssey, okay? I love space movies.
Really?
Okay, I just don't like this one.
I think that movie's boring. Movie. Yeah, I think that's a slow, boring movie.
That's a different type of movie, like, entirely. Like, all my issues with this movie, you can't even, like, say about it, because, like, that's not even about the character. Anyway, like, that's an idea movie. That's art. This is
Space Odyssey. Movie. We should do that one.
Yeah.
Well, the pacing of it is so fast.
It moves too quick for me. And that could
very
be more,
Marvel.
Like, I acknowledge that that's a more personal thing, but still, I much prefer a slower, tenser movie.
Make one point off of that. You're totally right. And Ethan brought this up too. If the beginning, like the sort of message that the movie wanted to send, I think by the end of it, is what he says to like his class on day one, that if you're going to space or whatever, things are going to go wrong. When things go wrong, you have to just deal with it. Like, you solve one problem after another, and that's how you get to come home. And like, that's a good message. But the thing is, that's all
really.
he did.
I don't think so.
Movie.
That is message movies don't really do much.
That's
for me
not the message I took away.
99% of the time, the message is something really basic that you most likely already know. So I don't know.
Well, if that was the message they were trying to send,
that's not the message I took away, but I could be wrong about what my interpretation is.
There is something that this movie almost touched on. Something that I really wanted them to do better was all of the Earth stuff, because there was some really interesting stuff there in terms of like, how much should we be valuing this guy's actual life? How much of this is we just want to look good for the press? How much of it is we actually want to bring him home alive? Like, there were some really dynamic ideas going on there, but they didn't like focus in on them. They didn't really.
Yeah, I thought that was the best part of the movies.
Yeah, no, it was. I agree, but it could have been even
I
better.
have no problems with that. Honestly, it's more the space stuff that I have if I have any
Jacob,
problems.
What would you have wanted to see more of?
I would have preferred more of a stance.
Let's save that
like,
for the what we
see
would fix section later.
Oh,
hold on.
Okay,
I'm pulling my podcast producer. I'm going to save that for later on when we talk about the what we would
Jacob's
fix.
the producer?
I said I'm talking as the producer.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, Dan.
Wait, Jacob, can you stand up for a moment? Okay, different shirts, but same design.
Same idea.
Say, I have the filmmaker. That was a moment there. Okay, what do we like about this movie? And before we all go, I actually want to talk about myself. So once upon a time, I was a mechanical engineer. And before that, and wait, I was a mechanical engineer because I liked the book so much.
For half a semester.
Yeah, for half a semester that I found out mechanical engineering is boring. And so my plan at one point in life was to join the Air Force to wedge my way into the space program, because that's one of the ways you can fast track into the space program. However, I'm dyslexic, incredibly dyslexic, downfallingly dyslexic. I can't fly in the Air Force or join NASA. I'm so dyslexic.
That does suck.
So I kind of hope to be very rich one day so I could bribe my way into space.
Well, hypothetically, they're getting pedestrians into space in the next few years. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I heard Tom Cruise is making a movie in space.
Film in space.
That would probably be if that was even like a 20-minute long film. That would probably
the next
be the most
Mission
expensive.
Impossible.
Yeah, no,
Mission
that would be
space. He's got a scene where he actually falls through the atmosphere back to Earth.
That would be like, okay.
Tom Cruise somewhere the world just like put down whatever he was doing is like, I need to do that.
Yeah, right.
He heard you.
Yeah, if
he's gonna jump through your window. I want you to write the next Mission Impossible.
Like if he does that, like nothing's gonna top that. Like no film is gonna
be
top.
The most expensive movie ever.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
Because I forget what it is, but anything that's gone to space and value has increased by an insane amount.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I also want to talk. I see this movie as a movie about collectivist efforts. And if you guys have talked to me about things in school, you know,
Comrade McLain, back at it again.
Yes.
I'm a fan of the idea of the greater good and stuff like that. And I like this idea of it's, you know, humanity's combining efforts. You know, you see China and NASA working together to bring someone back. And I do agree with you. They kind of do go over the politics. Is it one person worth it? But I also think that's the best thing is they value a person. It's something I actually think this movie does better than Saving Private Ryan is because this one person essentially he's worth something to the effort because he is still a person and, you know, his life matters. You know, he's important and there should be an effort to do something to keep him alive or get him back. Mm-hmm. So that's the message I took away.
Yeah, that's a cool way of reading the film. And I think, yeah, like I caught on that was something that they were trying to get at. I wish the movie took a stance on it though. Mm-hmm. Like it didn't seem to really, like it didn't really elaborate enough for me to like really like say, oh wow, the power of the collective is a really effective thing. Or like, oh wow, I really agreed with Jeff Daniels' character's like mindset because it actually saved Matt Damon's life. But I don't know. I didn't think it focused like the focus seemed to be all over the place. Like, is it a castaway in space movie? Is it actually about these ideas? I would have preferred it went one or the other personally.
See, I think it is a movie simply about just telling a story of the future. The same way we tell stories about pilots or we tell stories about the first man on the moon. This is telling stories about a big event in the future that could one day happen. And that's how I see it. Sure, yeah. I also, something I like about this movie, nobody is lucky. Nobody is, you know.
They're unlucky.
The chosen one. Unlucky, yeah. Nobody's the chosen. Nobody's the chosen one. Mm-hmm. Nobody is hit by a magical stone that makes them a super person. And nobody magically has all this luck of, oh, I luckily knew how Bushcraft 101 before I crashed on this island. And he does it. these are all people who are experts in their own field and can figure out everything based on where their expertise is. Mark Watney is a botanist, and sure, it's lucky that a botanist, but they actually explain in the book that he is a botanist, a mechanical engineer, and that's how he's allowed to cope with a lot of things. And he also mentions he's both in the movie too. And I like that it's skill set over luck or anything else. I'm with a few exceptions. I'm not a very big fan of chosen one stories. Mm-hmm. I'm more of, like I said, I'm a fan of collective effort. That's why I like films like Saving Private Ryan. You know, so I like this idea of collective efforts.
That's a good message.
I don't know. I'm a space nerd. We could spend, if I did another podcast about Mars, it would be hours on hours of me just talking about how awesome space is. And yeah, it's pretty cool, space. You know, I wanted to be in space. Can't really, but you know,
maybe
someday if I have a lot of money. You know, I believe space is something that belongs to the people, and I'm a big fan of NASA, and I am a little against the idea of privatizing it because I think space is a human endeavor and all people should have a part in it one way or another. I think this is an example. You know, you have people who work in PR who are working on the angle of how do we get the public behind getting him back and explain this to the public. You have somebody whose single job in this movie is to figure out the direct routes of how everything flies in space. We have engineers working on their specific tasks. We have people on the crew who have specific tasks. And, you know, I like that people have roles and fit into this huge system like a giant machine.
I did like, on the second time I saw it, that they do a fairly good job of distinguishing whose job is what. Because I remember the first time I saw it, I got a little confused. Like there's just a lot of political figure people in NASA. And you can tell who's most in charge. Like, obviously, it's Jeff Daniels, but it was a little muddy at first figuring out whose responsibilities were whose. And I think on a closer inspection of the movie, it's easier to tell, which is good because the politics of it isn't something that you want to spend the entire movie on. I think it is sort of sold as a blockbuster idea of, like, guy gets stranded on Mars. But the politics are what's sort of more interesting once you can understand it. So it's good that they like dove straight into it rather than just had the bad guy like corporate executive and then the good guys on like the computers who actually just want to bring our man home. Like that would have been too basic.
Nobody is a bad guy. I also kind of like that. It's man against man. There's I hate
man against nature, really.
Yeah, and I like those type of movies in any form. So yeah.
I like the cinematography. I think it's great. I like the humor, Jacob. I like the humor. I like the future aspects. How it's like, could this happen in the future? Yeah, what like what McLain said. And I like how they incorporate the politics, the political stuff.
Yeah, I feel like something I always love about this movie too is it's something I haven't seen before. I've seen space, but I had never seen like this kind of. I kind of like that it doesn't take itself so serious because I do know a lot of people who have been in incredibly stressful situations that deal, you know. I know people who were in the military and they said humor is the main way they get over horrific things. And I kind of like that humor is his coping mechanism. I'm someone who uses humor as my coping mechanism a lot of times.
Yeah. I like that his character does use humor to cope. Like, I think that was a good element. I wish he was a bit more charismatic, but that's not a huge issue. And of course I prefer more character development, but whatever. I think I'm not so sure that the rest of the movie should have been as funny. Like, I think it would have been better to show a contrast of like everyone else is taking this super seriously, but he's like goofing around because it's how he copes. Like, I think that's interesting. I think that's more interesting than what they did.
Just comes from the concept, which isn't always like the scene that I'm thinking of is when they're trying to figure out how they're going to pick him up after they go back and get him, and they're talking about all the stuff they're going to take out of the pod.
Yeah.
And that's like a hilarious scene because he's like, you're going to throw a man into space without anything in front of him. You're going to take the nose of the ship. It's like, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense in the way.
Yeah, I think that was a good scene too.
Yeah.
And they're all explaining it kind of seriously. Like, they're actually scared for this man's life and all the money that they're losing in the process.
Yeah.
But then you got goofy scenes like when Childish Gambino he's showing how the spaceship is going to go around the Earth and slingshot back to Mars. And I'm sorry, I didn't find that scene entertaining. I was cringing real hard, but yeah.
I actually like that scene.
I think of course they had to show like
if they went into the simple, like I think they, I've learned something when you explain it. Like I work in an aviation museum, and a lot of times a big part of my job is dumbing things down because I could tell you about the fundamentals of how a jet engine works.
Yeah, but this guy's dumbing it down for like the CEO of NASA.
Well, yeah, but I think he's
dumbing it down for the audience.
Yeah.
Which is why it comes across kind of well, I would say, because the end of that scene is as soon as he's done with his cringy speech, Jeff Daniels is like, "All right, get out." Like you've said your point. All right, is he right? And then they get into the business of it.
And sometimes I never saw it as he's dumbing it down to the CEO. I thought I saw it more as he was figuring out a quick way to explain it to the CEO of NASA.
Sure.
I like how this movie wraps up its characters at the end. I like its ending. I think, I'm not a fan of depressing movies, and this is a movie I don't feel depressed after.
In contrast to Castaway, it does a very, very short amount of time to wrap up all the characters. You get basically a montage like the rest of the movie.
I'm okay with that.
That's because there's not much to wrap up.
Shut up, Jacob.
I understand and I agree. They're sort of one-dimensional characters.
Yeah, okay.
McLain, I think for your whole interpretation of the film as an idea of showing how the collective works, I think viewing this film from a more technical lens, which is what you're doing, is really interesting. And I can see why you like it so much. Absolutely, I think that's fair. But personally, when it comes to me, I prefer a movie where I can really I can get inside the character's head. I can experience their emotional journey and learn something about myself through it or about the artist. And this movie's not that at all. So yeah.
All right. Besides Space Odyssey, what's your other favorite film?
Andrei Rublev.
I have never fucking heard of that.
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that.
It's a 3.5-hour Soviet film from 1966. Yeah, no.
That's why.
Speaking of Soviet films, not Soviet, but films, Come and See. Ever seen that one?
Yes, amazing.
Yeah, I want to figure out something to compare that to for this podcast so we can talk about it.
There's not much. That movie.
No.
Find a war movie that is totally doesn't affect you at all and is it's like a goofy war movie.
Yeah.
Compare that to Come and See. Most hardcore movie of all time.
I got one. It's All Quiet on the Western Front. Terrible.
Oh, that would be a good one.
The original from
the original. I hate that movie.
The TV version's pretty decent. The book's incredible. Back to The Martian. We got off topic.
Yeah.
Something I really I think you're right. Maybe it's the type of person I am. I think individualist, character driven movies. I like story I like a story more so than a character. Because I'm
just
someone,
ideas. That movie's got no characters, but it's all about the ideas.
Yeah. I like the ideas of this better.
Sure, yeah. But the presentation of really unique, profound ideas. And if you find this movie profound, then absolutely
That's the thing. I do find it profound because I see it as a way of telling a story from the future and survival in a way I haven't seen before. Interstellar focuses for me too much on the concept of something we don't understand ourselves too much quite yet.
That's true.
Gravity to me is a little too out there with it's just a disaster movie.
Yeah, Gravity's pretty one note. Gravity is if Castaway chopped off the beginning and the end.
Ad Astra is
I have to watch that still.
It's Apocalypse Now in space.
I have a hot take on Ad Astra.
Yeah, I think me and you have a very similar feeling.
Matt, Jacob will just rip apart Ad Astra.
Sure. I haven't heard it's amazing or anything, but I have
more Bad Astra.
And most other Yeah, but Jacob, and most other space movies are about missions that have happened. But this, to me, almost felt like watching a true story film from the future.
Yeah, I actually like that aspect of it.
And that's
really
why
does.
I like
Very
it's
realistic.
nothing's outlandish, nothing,
Other than the third act, which is forgivable, I think.
I
Yeah,
feel
no,
like
no, no, yeah.
this is a movie, a sci-fi where I feel like I can see this in my lifetime.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure,
And
it feels very believable.
yeah, I think so that's what I like about this movie. And that's also why this is my favorite movie. To me it's unique, and to me it also has had a huge influence over my personal life. So yeah, I don't know like how else to talk about it. So we're gonna move forward. What movie do we like better? I like The Martian better.
I like The Martian better.
Castaway, baby.
I feel like it's hard to compare them now that we've talked about it so much. If I had to pick which one I would watch on an evening, I would probably pick The Martian. But the more we've delved into it, I feel like even though they have such a similar concept at its base, just someone gets stranded and has to live on their own, they're both presented in very different ways. Castaway is more of a dramatic, like there's fun elements to it and stuff, and it has a whole range of emotions, but it's more of a character study on one person, whereas The Martian, like you said, it's a collaborative effort. It's more of a blockbuster sort of fun movie to watch than just something drama.
Yeah.
So if I had to pick, I would probably enjoy the evening more for just a fun like Martian movie, popcorn movie, because it has more than just mindless like action or anything. It's very fun to watch because it's fast paced and it's got all these cool science elements and realism to it.
The soundtrack is really fun too.
Yeah, the soundtrack's great.
Good song choices.
But the Castaway is just it's very hard to watch, like kind of drama, which is fun sometimes, but you have to sort of pace yourself with that.
All right. So next we're going to talk about pop culture influences, and then we'll talk about how we fixed each of these movies. So I want to start with Castaway. So Castaway actually had an incredible influence on people's interest in survival, because it made people really interested in survival. The next thing is FedEx job searches went up by 30%, and they saw an increase in employment because of this after the movie.
Really?
Yeah, really.
I would have thought it would be the opposite.
No, it had the inverse effect. Well, I think this is like there's always a surge in recruitment, even after like an anti-war movie basically comes out for the military, where maybe even though it's like, oh, maybe there's a little bit of excitement in this for some people. Because I know there's a huge surge in recruitment after both movies, Jarhead and what's the movie, The Hurt Locker, which are incredibly anti-war movies, but especially for EODs. There was this one time I was at my old job, and there was a guy who was an Army recruit who walked in, and I asked him, what do you think of the movie Hurt Locker? Because we were talking about it earlier that day. He's like, oh my God, so many freaking idiots tried to join after they saw that movie.
Interesting.
Imagine watching Jarhead and trying to join the military.
Yeah. I think there's something about that life appealing to some people, maybe. Anyway, and I kind of feel like that's maybe how that happened. Also, Wilson, one of the 3 Wilsons they used throughout the movie, sold for almost $20,000. Yeah,
I believe it.
No, I believe that.
Yep. And I forget what the coordinates are. I didn't write them down. But you can look up a specific coordinates, and you'll see a satellite image of Tom Hanks on the island with the words "help" written on it.
Really? It's still there.
Yeah. Now to talk a little bit about The Martian. So The Martian's pop culture influences have been a little impressive. One, NASA's actually they use movies a lot apparently to train it for training examples, and it also made them decide to look in the ideas of how to survive and cultivate Mars. It also did bring a lot of positive attention to NASA after the film was released, which is good because NASA is one of our most important sectors, in my opinion. And then another big thing about this movie is, in my opinion, is it's just it also has been it did drive up sales for the book The Martian, and interest in space, and brought a lot more interest to space travel too. So yeah, so those are pop culture influences. That information as you do. And of course, I said personal life interest. Just it did drive my life for a huge part. I'd say that's the movie that got me in the film. So now let's talk about how we'd fix these movies. Let's start with Castaway. So Jake, we'll start with you.
It's tough because I really like the big issue is that third act, and I like almost all of the beats there. It's weird. It's not very compelling because it's all downward action. It's all like very like let's wrap this up as opposed to we're still progressing the story. Like the climax has already happened. I don't know. I would try to just tighten it somehow. Like show us like one scene maybe after he gets off the island, like that scene where with the seafood, and then show us the scene where he tries to reconnect with his wife. And then I guess end with him like at the crossroads. Like I think that'd be a bit more tight, or maybe like split it into a second movie and just show like the aftermath in like a whole nother film, which would be
Castaway
really cool.
and then The Survivor.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, something I think I'd want to fix is I don't want to see the scene of when they get him on board the ship.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see the moment of two guys looking out. It's like, is that a dude? That's a dude. That's a fucking dude.
If that were made today, that scene would be in there.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, probably.
Yeah, no. What I would probably fix is maybe just have more fire scenes when he's surviving, just because I thought there was more beautiful images, and maybe some more sunsets. But again, sunset when you're filming is really hard to pull off because it's
You're all about the visual, huh?
Visual, yeah. Yes, because that was my main argument. And I probably cut the third act just a little bit, and maybe just focus a little bit more on the relationship, and have maybe more of a positive outcome.
I like that it's negative personally. I like that it leaves.
I didn't take it away as negative.
Well, it just
I didn't either, but it's not like a feel good ending.
I think it leaves up to you decide what happens next.
I wish they and yes, they will remain as friends, but I just wish they could have shown more like in like future later years, just them still continuing to be friends.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would probably say. The big thing I would change, in addition to just trimming out the ending because it takes too long, I'm not a fan of like completely up to you, like you can interpret how this ends sort of endings. The weird, slightly awkward scene where the woman drives by and stops at the crossroads and just tells him what's around. That's like kind of unnecessary. I like the image at the end where you get to see like she has the golden wings or whatever on her car, and that's what was on the package and everything. So there's some like weird mystery going on with that. But the actual final image of the movie is him just sort of standing in the middle of the road looking in all directions, and then he looks directly in the camera, and it's like, what would he do next?
Find out.
I would rather be left with an exact question and like leave it at that, like what do you think would happen next, rather than what do you think he's going to do with the rest of his life from this point forward. That's too big of a question, I think.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of what's in the box type of endings in movies.
Right.
So I guess how I'd fix this movie is I would change the last part. I don't think I'd do that whole big coming home ceremony for him that they did.
Really? What would you want to do for the ending then?
I would just make it more about him trying to pick up his life afterwards.
Yeah. That's the most compelling stuff about the third act, I think.
You know, because I think I could do without the scene with him on the airplane having everything explained to him. And
that scene is weird.
I would start it from when everybody's leaving that party, and then try to get back to his old life, and then have him. I'd still end it similarly, where he's deciding, you know, I'm just gonna go and live my life, man. And I kind of think that's what they imply at the ending. And then the only thing I'd maybe change is some of the tiny things on the island, but I couldn't even tell you directly what it is. I think I agree with Ethan. Some of the cinematography is flawed. I do like the wide shots they use, but other times it's like a little wonky with some of the mid shots and close-ups.
Makes sense.
So I guess we move on to The Martian. Takers go first.
I got an idea. I think something, even though they wanted it to be pretty fast-paced and blockbustery, like just fun movie, and I like that part of it. I think one thing they could have done that would have enhanced the whole thing would have been to spend a little bit more time on when Mark Watney wakes up and he's alone and he panics. Because all they really do in the movie is they have this good stretch of time where we focus on just him before we go back to NASA and they figure out that he's still alive. But the majority of that time is he wakes up, he does like a medical procedure on himself, and then he kind of goes outside and just says like, I'm not going to die here, and then goes to work. But like, you could have had a much more powerful moment, even just one scene where he's really just lost and kind of gives up for a minute before he has that strong realization and like gets his life together. I think that would have made the rest of the triumph of the rest of the movie, especially his own, much more powerful because you could see the contrast there. And that would have developed his character a lot more too, because he would not just be this guy that solved his own problems. He would have overcome that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I would change.
What I would fix is that Iron Man scene that when he's flying in space. I would take that out, and I would have more inconveniences before he meets them. Like just have more inconveniences and not have that flying Iron Man scene. And maybe just more character development from the characters, and more humor.
More humor, really.
More humor.
It didn't win Golden Globe.
Yeah, won Best Comedy.
Yes,
Best comedy.
Yes,
someone pointed out,
yeah.
like, The Martian, best comedy.
And I think Matt Damon was like even presenting an award at that ceremony, and like every time he mentioned it for like best comedy, he'd just be like, best comedy.
It's a bit of a face palm moment. Like that's really what you thought of it.
I mean, I speak as most. I hate award shows. Until the one day, hopefully, I win something. I don't know.
Until they give me something, I hate.
Until they give me something, I disapprove. To me, I feel like it's a very dated thing because there's never, in my opinion, a best picture. All films are created. There's a lot of good films, and something I think I thought to myself: the difference between The Martian and Castaway is The Martian is easier to watch for me. Castaway is kind of like reading a book, if that makes sense.
That's a good comparison.
And one is literally a book, and so Jake, how would you fix this movie, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go. I think my biggest issue, and if you have a film and your characters don't arc, unless you have some other artistic intention for them, I consider that a flaw. And this movie, none of the characters arc. They don't even have flaws really. Like I couldn't figure out like what any of them were trying to do. And Matt Damon's only goal is like, I gotta survive. And I think that's kind of boring. Like in Castaway, Tom Hanks is trying to get back to his wife. Like it's really compelling. And in this, it's like, oh, like what does he have at home? I have no idea. And they like montage through the other like members of the spaceship, like saying hi to their families with the David Bowie music. And it's like, okay, it's like, I'm still not very compelled. Like, I think what I would have done without changing the movie too much is given Matt Damon like that extra, like I have something to get back to. I'm not just trying to survive. I'm trying to do this thing. And they almost touch on it too when it's like, we're going to have to spend another year away from our families in space to save him. And I think that's a really cool decision. Yeah, but personally, like if I really wanted a great movie out of this, that wasn't just like, because I'm not a big fan of blockbuster cinema in general, but like something really artsy would have been to like either focus entirely on Matt Damon's story or entirely on the Earth story. I think the Earth story would have been really cool to just focus on that. And like we don't even know Mark Watney. It's all on Earth. Like that'd be really cool, I think.
That would actually be really interesting.
But it'd be a very different film. Like obviously that's not a fix so much as like a different idea, a different approach to the same idea.
Right. Imagine, especially in the beginning when they have so little communication with them.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great.
Just through pictures, like That would be really interesting to watch just from our end.
Yeah, and it'd be really satisfying to finally see him too. Like, I think that'd be another cool movie. But yeah,
that would be cool.
So,
I'd like to see more realistic sci-fi in the near future like this.
Yeah. So I fix it by giving you more Martian. I want a miniseries. That would have been.
That might do well to flesh out the characters. Yeah.
I think you could, because the book. I honestly, I disagree with you. I actually think I like this more than I like other things because they're not really flawed, more so than the fact they are human.
Sure.
It's because sometimes I feel like with flawed characters, movies push a little too hard on. I'm gonna make this person incredibly flawed. An example of this, and I guess it's a true story, is Flight. I fucking hate that movie. I made it.
That's Zemeckis
10 minutes. I made 10 minutes into it, and I couldn't stand a single character, single person. So
I would just be asking for more, like Castaway. Like, his flaw is that he's a workaholic. Like, he's still a good guy. He just has this one basic flaw that he needs to overcome. I just wanted that.
Yeah. So Jacob, I know you were bothered by the decompression chamber breaking.
Yeah. Tell me when they forced.
So they show, actually it's after the storm when he's sitting there kind of figuring out what the fuck he does next. Because there is that moment. They do kind of give him one moment of like, well, what do I do now that I'm pretty sure I'm going to die? Before he decides he needs to grow potatoes. And it shows on the computer, it says instructional integrity damage on it. And it shows that a few other times while he's sitting there and he's monitoring it. They only show that once. And then they do show that there's a puncture right before it flies off. They cut to it quickly, but they do show there's a puncture.
I think also the scene where it comes off is really quick. Like, it's still in the same rapid fire pacing, and so there's no room for building up tension. Like, there's a great movie. I
kind of like that.
The movie Deliverance does racketing up the tension incredibly. Like, the movie's lazily going along, and then there's this scene where it all stops, and the scene's going on for 5 minutes. You're like, who are these characters? Why are we still here? And then you realize, oh, shit's about to go down. And then it snaps, and the movie becomes this really tense thriller from that point on. I think having that scene be weirdly slow paced is a really great way to check the audience in and say wait, something's going on here, and then really hit them with the thing blowing up.
I don't know. I feel like it's almost better that it happens suddenly.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is more of a personal preference, but I think I prefer more tension.
I think for the type of story, it makes more sense that something breaks.
Obviously, I support the decision that it should blow up. I just think the scene and the way they presented it was not compelling to me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that is this episode of Movie Smackdown, everybody. I talked about one of the best movies ever, The Martian, and Jacob was wrong.
Oh, that's the conclusion? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.